Hi folks, it's Doc Severson for the Theonite Report for Tuesday, December 20th. Now I'm looking at my Analyzer tab here, and to begin with, many of you will recognize the familiar old high probability iron condor graph here. So typically how we get into something like this when we start to learn about selling options is getting our wings out there way out of the money, right? So we have this trade which is relatively safe because the price trades around in this area and never really gets close to our wings. Well, that may be somewhat fiction, as we'll see. That's the problem that many people run into, is that that's the only iron condor that they know. Now, to set up a trade like this, typically what we're doing is we're going out there maybe 30, 40 days, maybe a little bit longer, and we're looking for like around the $10 or 10 delta options to sell, right? So 10 delta options to sell down here at 2160, and 10 delta options here to sell maybe up around 2345 on the call side. So we have about a 90% probability of success with this trade, right? Well, wrong. What we have to do is we have to multiply the two probabilities together. So 90 times 90 is going to lead us to about an 80% probability of success overall, because basically what you've got is this risk profile here, and no matter what happens to the price, you're miserable because one end is attacked or the other end is attacked. And the other problem that you run into pretty quickly on a trade like this is that what you realize is that you're picking up nickels in front of the steamroller. This is what we always run into, right? So the problem is that you're not getting well paid, and you have to sit on these positions for weeks at a time. That's an enormous amount of time risk in today's market to get this pittance of a return, but you're staring at the cliff over here. So in a case like this, again, you're looking at maybe making, for one contract on the full SPX, you're maybe making $80 and you're risking over 400 on both sides. Again, that's the issue is that you're miserable no matter which way the price moves, to the upside or to the downside. So here's the problem that many traders run into, especially as they learn about the iron condor. Usually the first variant that they learn about is this high probability iron condor, setting the trade up at 10 deltas or whatever. It's usually right around that area most people learn the trade. And they see a market moving and they say, okay, this is not good. So they see it going flat and they say, okay, now it's a flat market. Now's the time to get into this trade. And as soon as they get into it, all of a sudden, boom, they get movement. And that doesn't feel very good. So maybe you even got past this one. And then you say, okay, now it's a flat market. Okay, good. Now's the right time to do this. And then all of a sudden, boom. And not only boom once, but also boom and then boom again. This is what we run into. Range contraction like this leads to range expansion. So if you want to be miserable in today's market, if you want to get your positions run over, and if you want to contribute to other people's accounts, if all those are a check for you, then the high probability iron condor is probably the right trade for you. And I say this after having traded this again and again and again and again over the last decade. But really since 2013, with the exception of some very nice times earlier this year where we actually did have the volatility to support the trade like this. Okay, this was good stuff for a high probability iron condor. Even this was pretty good. But after we got through the Brexit, all the life and the volatility just got sucked out of the market, and really we're left picking up crumbs in front of that said steamroller. So what can you do with a market like this? If you like the idea of the iron condor, what options are you left with? Well, believe it or not, actually the way to trade iron condors or any other strategy in today's market is to go with a lower probability. Now, I know that takes a lot of people by surprise when I first say that. Lower probability, why wouldn't you want the very highest probability trade that we can get? Nope, actually what you want is a lower probability, number one. And number two, what you have to do is to be a little bit savvier in terms of how you analyze the price. So when you see something that's been going on for a while like this, range contraction like this, all this does is wind up the spring and get it ready to move. So when you start to understand that range contraction leads to range expansion, and that leads to like this never-ending cycle of every time you see it wound up, it's getting ready to move again. And this overall is actually just a larger time frame, nonlinear price action, right? Like this, getting ready to move again. Range expansion, range contraction, range expansion, and then pretty soon you're getting in the sync of things. So what you'll see is actually there are times where you have nice, flat, sideways price action. Even the last few days has been ideal for this. Is there anything that we can do over a period that's this short? Well, if it's the aforementioned high probability condor, no, you can't do anything about that. You feel like you have a target on your forehead, and the price is just going to come get you eventually after that consolidation breaks out again. So if we do have a market, which is basically implied volatility is on the floor like this, right? But is moving in the fashion which is stair-stepping, breakout, consolidation, breakout, consolidation, right? This is essentially what we've had for months now. And this is very likely what we might get going into 2017 until things do get more volatile and more uncertain. So what I'm suggesting is that we narrow our time frame on this. We don't look at positions that are weeks and weeks and weeks out, and then hopefully that time value decay eventually erodes from there, and then we get out of the position. I mean, again, back to the low probability or the high probability condor here is that it takes weeks, typically 6 or 7 weeks, to get enough distance on these positions for them to erode far enough for us to make a profit on these trades, okay? This works great when you can get into one of these markets that has enough implied volatility to give you enough wing size, so enough wingspan to go outside of the current trading range of the position. But when we have markets that are trending like this, this is not the trade to use. What we need to do instead is go to the low probability iron condor. Now, what makes this so great? Well, first of all, one look at this and you would say, well, this is terrible. What an awful trade. Why would I want to do something like that when I could get wings way out here instead of wings, this close? Are you kidding me? This is close quarters combat. Well, there's two things here you got to keep in mind. Remember, with options, everything is a compromise. There's no one perfect trade, but what you can do using your discretion as a trader is you can better match the character of the current market towards a specific option strategy. And what I'm suggesting is that we go in closer to the money, because what you're going to find is that options that are closer to at the money will erode faster. Okay, so by pulling them in a little bit better, they erode faster, which is good. We have less time risk. Also, what we're looking at here is the risk of the trade matches the reward of the trade. Not to say that we're going to sit in this thing for the entire time, right? But at least we've set our risk from day one, and one trade is not going to wipe us out. It's not going to wipe out months worth of profits for us. Okay, so we can sleep at night. We don't have to worry about these huge gaps that the market has or overnight news or anything like that. We've set our risk from day one. So two big advantages. Again, we set our risk, number one. Number two, the options will decay much faster because they're further into the money. Okay, so we can even use time spreads, but that's beyond the scope of today's video. But we can get right at the money with time spreads like calendars and make the process even faster. But back to the chart for a second. So if we identify these areas where we have these short little consolidation patterns, and typically what I'm looking for is where I have the energy running out of these. So when I have the energy running out based on the fractal energy indicator, what it shows to me is a very high probability that we're about to see a few days of range contraction like this, or a few days of range contraction, right? It's the same thing. And so instead of waiting weeks and weeks and weeks for the right setup to come along and then hoping, crossing our fingers, hoping that the price doesn't go on a bender to the upside or something, or sell off, then we could just narrow our focus to these small little consolidations. We can go closer to the money. We can play what's called a low probability iron condor, and we can match what the current market is giving us to the edge of this specific trade. What you'll typically find in trades like this, as long as you don't wait too long for the consolidation, again, you need to be very aggressive as it enters that consolidation area. Set up the trade. You can't wait for this thing to say, finally confirm for you that it is in a range contraction, because by that point it's too late. It's about ready to break out again. But if you do this, then typically what we're finding is we're getting about a 20% return over the course of anywhere from 3 to 5 days. So again, it's fairly fast. It's fairly fast and is a very effective trade in managing risk, allowing us to get in, get our fair share, get out, reduce our time risk, reduce our overall risk, and match the character of the market. That is it for today's report. Thanks for listening, folks. Have yourself a great evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.